We are continuing our investigation of texture, and you've already learned about the two types of texture, real and implied, and hopefully you have collected your objects, because we're going to use real objects into a drawing that will be implied texture. So some of the objects I've collected are some twine, sponge with a bumpy surface, a can also has a ridged surface, some ribbon, a feather, some cupcake holders with ridges, and a rock. Anything interesting, again, that has some kind of texture that you can feel will work great for these drawings. Even something soft, such as the ribbon or sweater or fur, that maybe did not work for the rubbings because they were too soft, will work for this drawing exercise. Okay, so you're gonna need a piece of paper. Any paper is fine. You could even use a paper bag. That would be really interesting to draw on. And a regular pencil. Simple tools today. So you're going to start by folding your paper one way then the other. So if you know the hot dog way, the long way. Okay, and give it a crease. Open it back out. And then fold it the short way. Or the hamburger way. You guys taught me this. Hamburger and hot dog. I think you remember it because it's food. And then you're going to open it back out and you're going to take those two long edges and bring them to the center crease. Now this doesn't have to be super exact because it's not the full folding that's important, but the sections that are important. So we're going to use each of these sections for one of your drawings. So we're going to start with a sponge. I kind of find that outer contour pretty interesting. You're basically going to use your contour line, which remember focuses on the edges of the form and the surface. So you also have your cross contours here. You can see the ridges here. It's bumpy. And you're going to try to capture the surface. We're going to include texture, not just the contours, but the texture with your mark making on your paper. And again, it doesn't have to be exact. It's more about the experience of hand and eye coordination and capturing the surface with your mark making, whatever you decide your mark making is going to be. So I'm going to start with the outer contours of my sponge. And this time, you can use that sketchy line that you all like to use. If you want to pick up your pencil, go right ahead. Okay, so there's my outer shape, and then, I have these lines here. So maybe, but they're not quite as dark as that outer edge. So maybe I'm just going to sketch in some of those lines. Remember, this does not have to be exact. It's more about the mark making and getting the feel, the texture. And this is kind of rough here, so maybe I'm just gonna make up some kind of little mark that's gonna describe my sponge surface, which for me is turning out to be like a little scribble. So again, you're going from the real texture that you can feel or touch with your hands to the implied texture that is suggested by your mark making. So think about when we saw in that video the wallpaper that you were looking at and how it suggested the roughness of the bark. But it was really just a print on paper. So you're just going to do a drawing on paper to suggest the rough surface of my bumpy sponge. Okay. Maybe I'm going to add a little bit of curving here because I know that it kind of curves on those edges. And it's a little bit of 3D here because I'm just playing with it. there's my first drawing. And you're just going to continue with your other objects. So let's say I'm going to go on to my cupcake holder. Okay, that will just be your next section on your paper. You can start with the outer contours. That's kind of a good place to start. And again, I'm just going to kind of invent a mark that's going to describe that circle. If I can make it a circle. Okay, it's just that bumpy ridge that creates that texture all along the edge here. And then I have that inner circle. That's the bottom of the cup. Right? And then all those ridges. Remember, they're kind of light there. They're not super. In some sections they're a little bit lighter. Remember, you can pick your pencil up where they get a little bit lighter. And then where they get darker, where there's a little less light hitting them, maybe they get darker. So think about what that line looks like. And there's actually a second one sitting right beside of it. I'm going to just add a little, maybe make it a little more circular. Okay, there's my second drawing. So these are not going to take you very long, hopefully. Use your eye to really observe what those edges look like. Remember, you can pick it up and feel it, so you can get an idea before you start drawing from the real to the implied. And I'll do one more for you, the feather. This is a beautiful blue jay feather I found on my walk. This has a very soft, smooth surface. Right? If you've ever held a feather in your hand, it's very soft compared to the ridges that are here or on the sponge. And it doesn't matter which box you're using. I'm going to start with that long line here because that kind of gives me the direction of the feather. Again, you don't have to use that line I was encouraging you to use with your contours, but still use the idea of traveling along the surface to get the general shape of your object. And I'm just going to kind of invent this little bumpy line that kind of follows along to create the edge of that feather. And there's some little wispy parts that come out down here. And my line is very light because the edges of this feather are very light. And if the line is light, the image will have a weightless feel to it rather than a very heavy, like this heavy dark line makes it feel more solid, right? This kind of wispy line makes it feel weightless. Less volume, less gravity to it. Okay, and then there's some nice marks that kind of make up the pattern of that feather. I'm going to add some of that in there. Make it lighter as they go down. It's a little dark here. If I look closely, I can see some tiny, tiny little lines in this feather. So although the feather appears like it's a solid piece, it's really made up of all these really, really delicate little fibers, right, that hold it all together. So I might try to translate some of that with my lines by making them really, really light. And then you can also look at the direction how those fibers go. Remember when you were drawing hair, if you were drawing those half faces, if you got to that with our contour drawing, you might pay attention to the direction of that line because that again is going to help you shape that form using that contour. Some of these kind of come off and curl. separate a little. All the information is here. Keep your eye here as you go back and forth, right? Keep bringing your eye back to your object, because that's where the information is. Give it a try. See if you can give me 8 drawings, 8 different textures. See what you find around your house. Good luck. Thanks.